A young boy declares he's a wizard, playfully sparring with a girl pretending to be a monster. But the game instantly escalates when he lifts his wooden stick and strikes her hard. She instantly cries out, demanding to know why he hit her for real. His answer is simple. Monsters are supposed to lose to wizards. An elderly man watches from nearby, commenting on their energy, and the boy instantly recognizes him as Rebus. But there's a serious problem brewing in the background. Whispers of a terrifying, leopard-sized monster shrouded in black shadows, explaining that the village chief has already gone to the city to find a real wizard. He's confident they'll bring someone back to defeat the beast, and Aina expresses relief. Mesa places a comforting hand on Aina's head, warning her to stay far away from the forest for now. Rebus, however, warns everyone to be careful, emphasizing that killing a monster is nearly impossible without a wizard. The villagers ask if everyone knows, and Rebus confirms they've all heard the news. Then he asks if a certain person has been informed as well, but when Rebus inquires who he means, the man simply brings up the Shepard on Hizril Hill. Meanwhile, at the foot of the mountains, the Shepard Terron lies back with a straw in his mouth, surrounded by his bleeding sheep. He finds it all incredibly boring. The same scenery, the same day, repeating over and over. He's so isolated he thinks he'll forget how to talk at this rate. Suddenly, Rebus is there, calling Turan a pathetic brat and demanding to know why he's slacking off before sunset. Turan simply tells him to move because he's blocking the sunlight, earning a scolding from Rebus about his manners. Rebus then brings up that incident from back then, which Turan pretends not to remember. But Rebus clarifies, the time Turan's mother died, and Rebus tried to quietly claim the sheep as shared property. Turan sits up, instantly confirming that yes, that's exactly the incident he's still holding on to. He declares he's not generous enough to share his mother's inheritance, and tells Rebus they aren't close enough for small talk, instructing him to just say what he wants and leave. Rebus yells at him, calling him a little brat, but there's a reason he came all this way. Turan asks what's happening, and Rebus, still panting, finally reveals it. A monster has appeared. Turan asks if it's truly a monster. Rebus confirms, describing it as a leopard as big as a house, found by ROP, who's now notifying the other villagers. Turan instantly realizes this is a very serious problem. Rebus watches Turan, completely baffled by his lack of fear, even though he's the most likely target in the entire area. He admits he has no idea what kind of courage Turan possesses. Then, he warns Turan to be careful because the village chief has actually gone to the city, specifically to request a wizard. Rebus tries to explain that he came because he was worried about Turan, but Turan instantly calls him out, questioning why Rebus cannot just admit he is worried about the sheep instead of him. This pushes Rebus to his limit, and he yells out in sheer frustration. Turan, completely unfazed, just tells him to get lost if he is done talking because his breath smells like rot. With that, the old man turns and walks away into the distance, leaving Turan alone. These beasts, after all, wield mysterious power and magic. If humans have wizards, then beasts have monsters. Turan walks through the tall grass, wondering if a wizard is really coming to the village because of a monster. He realizes this means he might finally get to see one in person. Standing in the field with his sheep and dog, Turan considers that if it is just a rural village chief calling them, there must be a catch. There's a good chance these wizards will not be anything special, he thinks, even if they are genuine. Still, Turan really wants to see one, curious just how strong they truly are. Suddenly, his nose catches a whiff of something horrifying. Turan instantly realizes the smell is coming from blood. He heads straight for the forest, following the scent, certain the source is in that direction. He steps onto the path, deep into the woods, knowing he is moving closer to whatever caused it. A foot steps forward and then comes to a sudden, chilling halt. Turan stares down at the fallen bodies, whispering Rebus's name. The irony hits him hard. Rebus had warned him to be careful, yet he was the one who entered this area first. The grim truth sinks in. The source of the blood he detected was Rebus himself. Terron remains silent, processing the horrific scene. The wounds are not something an ordinary wild animal could have inflicted. He looks at the mangled, white-furred remains, concluding it has to be the work of the monster. And that is when things get even worse. His eyes widen in shock as he senses a sudden, overwhelming threat. A massive paw lands on the ground, shaking the earth as a huge monster appears right before him. Terron looks back, staring directly into the beast's eyes as it moves closer, realizing the reports were true and a monster truly exists. Back in the village, a young boy playing wizard asks his father how strong a monster truly is and if adults really cannot beat it. His father's voice is grim as he explains they are insanely powerful. If ordinary adults rush it, they would not even be able to collect their bones. The child then asks the terrifying question, what will happen to their village if they cannot beat it? The father tries to reassure his son. He says not to worry because the village chief is bringing a powerful wizard to handle the beast. But the boy instantly asks the one question that changes everything. What if the wizard loses? His father laughs off the idea, confidently explaining that wizards are great beings, born with magic, who can kill monsters with a single word. And now we cut to that exact wizard, Turan, as he faces down the beast. Turan stares the creature down and simply commands it to die. The monster actually stumbles back, creating distance, but then it snarls, clearly not giving up just yet. Turan releases a surge of his aura, energy crackling around him, but then a terrifying thought creeps in. Is his power failing? There's just one problem. The monster doesn't wait, lunging forward again, even faster and more ferocious than before. But Terron isn't done. Stop, he commands, his voice firm and absolutely unyielding. As if hit by an invisible force, the creature halts mid-motion, recoiling once more, frozen in place. Terron steadies himself, his mind racing. He already knows killing this monster won't solve anything, but a new problem troubles him now. The monster lunges, but Terron sidesteps the strike. The beast snarls, baring its teeth, as Terron leaps backward to evade its relentless assault. If that's the case, he thinks, then he'll have to improvise. He reaches into his pouch and pulls out a small stone. This, he decides, is going to be his Shepard staff. The monster prepares for another lunge. Turan grips the stone, commanding it to harden, his focus absolute. He wills himself to be faster, then spins rapidly. He slams his foot down, launching himself forward, commanding his attack to pierce straight through. A blue energy slash tears into the monster. Then, a concentrated beam of blue light rips through the creature, impacting the ground and kicking up a massive dust cloud. Turan walks towards the massive, snarling monster, a smirk on his face. I was aiming for the head, he states, just as another brilliant beam of light strikes the creature. Its head is instantly blasted apart by the intense energy, and Turan watches in silence as the dust settles. He stands before the now fallen beast, noting to himself that this is his first time using that power on a monster. He wonders if he should toss the monster's mangled remains into a valley somewhere. Terron clicks his tongue, annoyed. Gripping his weapon, he thinks bitterly that the village really put him to work. The truth is, he's a wizard. He first realized he possessed special abilities 8 years ago, when he was just 10 years old. A young Turan sits on a storage room floor, arms raised as kitchen tools and containers float around him. He looks up with a bright smile, shouting for someone to look at the flying logs. Turan calls out to She, just as a staff clatters to the floor. He runs to She, excitedly exclaiming that he can make fire and wind. The memory of that day remains perfectly clear. She yells for him to stop, and it's the first and last time she ever gets truly mad at him. She calls his name, telling him to come have a chat. She asks if he wants to live with her for a long time, and Turan whispers that he does. She then makes him promise he won't use that power from then on. Never use this power in front of other people, she warns him. Turan, confused, asks why. She then asks if he remembers the story about the noble and the knight. Years ago, Turan's mother gave him a chilling warning. He inherited the forbidden powers of a knight, but the world outside their village is dangerous. Ruthless nobles see knights as nothing more than slaves. And if anyone ever discovers his secret, he will be in grave danger. She makes him promise, right then, that no one will ever know he's a wizard. That promise becomes his entire life. 8 years later, Turan still lives by that vow. He stands alone, the secret of his wizardry hidden, never once revealing his power. He tells himself he has no desire to ever descend the mountain, no wish to be known as anything but the Shepard wizard, a quiet guardian. He truly believes the promise will never be broken. But fate has other plans. Suddenly, a jarring thud rattles his door. The village chief's furious shouts demand he come out, and Turan's peaceful life instantly shatters. He pulls the door open, revealing the chief, Azai's, and Marvin, their faces contorted with rage. Turan, despite the chaos, just yawns, ready to face whatever they throw at him. He has no idea what he's walking into. Turan calmly walks away from the growing mob, his voice cutting through the tension. He asks if they're actually accusing him of killing Rebus. The village chief explodes, screaming Turan is shameless, that he hurt Rebus and left him to be eaten by monsters. This is a deadly accusation. Turan simply remains silent, a knowing look in his eyes. He turns to the villagers, including Azai's, and calmly states that he understands why they want to frame him. Azai's demands to know what he means, but Turan doesn't flinch. He lays out their secret. The oldest man in the village died alone because they were all too scared to fight the monster themselves. Turan sees this as their pathetic way out, a desperate attempt to shift blame. And this is where things get really ugly. The village chief loses it, grabbing Turan by the collar. Turan just repeats that blaming him is the easiest way to escape their own failure. The chief screams Turan's name and throws a desperate punch, but Turan effortlessly dodges it. Then, in a flash of raw power, Turan strikes the chief across the face. This isn't just a punch. This is something else entirely. His magic is dangerously convenient. If Turan wishes strongly enough, things just happen. He stands over the fallen chief as Azai's and the other villagers charge forward, weapons drawn, their faces twisted with fear and fury. But every surge of this incredible power comes at a cost, a drain on something deeper within him, and he's about to pay the price. Turan whispers a silent command for them to fall. Instantly, Azai's and the other villagers collapse onto the grass, completely incapacitated. Turan thinks to himself that he doesn't even need to use his full power. Just a tiny spark is enough. He casually walks past his stunned opponents, his mind already on his next move, but we don't know what that is. What is he planning? And what will he do now that his secret is out? This changes everything. Striking just hard enough to make them cry out, but not enough to kill. He moves through the group, dominating them as he swings his staff with brutal force, snapping wooden poles and sending his opponents collapsing onto the grass, gasping for air. He isn't holding back, yet he also isn't going for the kill, which is incredibly unsettling. For 8 long years, this has been his life. 8 years of hiding the truth. Terron is actually a wizard. He walks across the field, leaving a trail of unconscious men behind him. Terron looks back at another group of villagers, coldly remarking they should have saved their energy for Rebus' funeral instead. When one stammers, trying to say they aren't here to fight, a girl calls out, saying they came to see him. But Terron only tells them to take the idiots down with them, utterly unmoved. This guy is not friendly. Back inside, Terron walks towards his bed, sighing to himself. He knows this means chaos in town again, and they'll just use it as an excuse to rip him off when he tries to trade. But he instantly dismisses it, figuring he can just beat them up until he gets a fair deal. After all, he just gave him a proper whooping, so they shouldn't be back for a while. Or so he thinks. But then a loud, insistent pounding suddenly rocks his door. Turan stares at it, commenting that whoever it is must be completely insane as a gloved fist repeatedly strikes the wooden frame. Turan rips the door open, yelling to ask who it is, ready to demand if they really want to continue this behavior. But then he stops because standing silently in his doorway, looking down at him, is a man named Kior. Kior, looking past Turan into the house, asks who the other person is. He quickly excuses himself, explaining he hoped to ask for a favor during his travels, but realizes he's arrived at a very bad time. This is not going well for Turan. Turan remains silent, wondering if Kior is a traveler. Kior then apologizes again, mentioning that some uninvited guests arrived just moments before, making it clear he saw the aftermath of Turan's earlier brawling. Turan looks at him, remembering his mother's lessons, and questions if his manners are proper enough. He instantly feels awkward speaking nicely. It's something he's never done with anyone in this pathetic town. But then he notices the sword at Kior's side. A traveler with a weapon in this sleepy old place? That immediately raises Turan's suspicions. Turan starts to suggest an inn if that's what Kior seeks, but a loud stomach growl interrupts him. It's Kior's. Turan lets out a sigh, a small smile finally appearing on his face. He prepares a meal, explaining he's not well off, so they don't have much. Kior, clearly impressed, calls it a feast and notes that Turan must have never met anyone from outside the town. Turan agrees, explaining he was born and raised on this isolated hill, living as a shepherd his entire life. He adds that it's rare for this small town to get tourists, and Kior looks at him, finding Turan's whole existence incredibly intriguing. But why? The man finds it fascinating, commenting on how incredibly well-mannered Turan is for a shepherd. He assumes Turan's parents taught him well. Turan quietly explains that his mother taught him everything, but she passed away from an illness a few years back. The man nods, saying she raised a proud son, surely now among the gods. He thanks Turan once more, but Turan simply replies he just lives by his mother's lessons. Then Turan asks what brings the man all the way out to this remote country town, explaining he's here because he was asked a favor. And that's when he drops the bombshell. He's a wizard. Turan instantly connects the dots, realizing this must be the wizard the village elder mentioned, and the man confirms it. The wizard then explains he senses a monster nearby, but he can't quite pinpoint it. He's actually here looking for someone to deal with it. He finds it incredibly strange that Turan knows about the elder and the monster, yet stays so calm, especially since Turan would be the first target if it attacked. He remarks on Turan's unusual bravery for a shepherd and then asks, "Who are you? Really? Are you scared?" Turan's mind flashes back to a pivotal conversation with his mother. He remembers asking her why his wizardry had to be an absolute secret. She explained it was because of the corrupt nobles, comparing them to shepherds and knights to their loyal dogs. She warned that nobles might act kind, but they would inevitably sell him off or even sacrifice him. She told him they didn't want that life for him and asked if he wanted to stay with her. He instantly said yes. His mother then made him promise to remember one crucial thing. No one, absolutely no one, could ever know he was a wizard, especially other wizards. If they found out, they would separate him from her, turning him into nothing more than a shepherd dog, used and discarded at their whim. And to avoid being found out as a wizard, Terron knows deep down he might have to kill people. He tells himself, if it comes to that, to keep his secret safe, he will do it. Back in the present, the wizard, now identified as Kior, watches Terron intently. He asks why Terron is so silent, and Terron remains quiet for a tense moment. Kior finally laughs, breaking the silence. He tells Terron that such a serious face only makes his joke awkward. Terron wonders if it's some kind of joke. Kior quickly apologizes, admitting he doesn't have the best sense of humor. He stands from the table, telling Terron not to apologize, because he's the one who should be sorry for catching him off guard. Kior explains it's his first time hearing a wizard joke, and Terron's reaction was so entertaining he just took the teasing too far. He reaches out his hand, remarking they haven't properly introduced themselves. Kior introduces himself as a wanderer, shaking Terron's hand and apologizing for not going first. Terron, a shepherd, finally introduces himself. As they share a meal, Terron casually mentions he's 18, and Kior drops a bombshell. He's 75. Terron is stunned, insisting Kior doesn't look anywhere near that old. Kior then explains that wizards simply age more slowly than ordinary people, living much longer lives. Turan asks what led Kiorn to become a wanderer. Kiorn reveals he left after serving the powerful Arabion family for 60 years, deciding in his later years that he just wanted to roam, never settling down again. Terron smiles, finding it all incredibly romantic. The conversation feels light, almost harmless, yet profound. Kiorn falls silent for a moment, a rare thought crossing his mind. He never knew spending time with someone genuinely good could be this enjoyable. He savors the quiet, reflecting on how much he truly enjoyed their conversation. Breaking the silence, Kiorn points out how late it's gotten. Turan agrees, surprised he hadn't even noticed the sun rising as Kiorn stands to leave. Kiorn places a coin on the table, an Arabion silver. Explaining its purity means it more than covers the meal. Turan accepts it gratefully, wishing Kiorn a smooth hunt. Kiorn, already moving away, calls back, warning Turan not to act like they'll never see each other again. He hints he might even stop by a few more times to mooch off him on his way. Turan smiles, commanding his flock to gather as he processes everything. This is the first time he's ever met another wizard, and it makes him realize how long it's been since he had such an easy, comfortable conversation. He finds himself reflecting that Kiorn feels more like an adult than anyone he's ever encountered. And then, a memory flashes. Kiorn returning home, a fresh kill in hand, announcing he's back again. Turan walks through his fields, surrounded by his sheep, feeling a surprising truth settle in. Kiorn really is a good person. He always thought knights were just emotionless hunting dogs for arrogant nobles. But Kiorn changes everything. Now, Turan looks ahead, wondering how he's supposed to tell him. Meanwhile, Kiorn makes his way through the forest, noting the strange quiet on Hizeril Hill. There are no monsters left, and he pauses, sensing something isn't right. He spots traces of a fierce battle, yet there's no monster presence, making him wonder if someone already hunted it. But then, who could have done it? He decides it's a relief either way. If someone made the area safe, that's all that matters. But this is where everything starts to fall apart. Kiorn gasps in shock, whipping his head around as a giant clawed foot crushes the ground, a gruesome snarl echoing just before a massive creature looms directly over him. Is this a monster's wraith? And who in the world would do something like this? A massive claw looms over him, but Kiorn strikes back with a powerful blow. He instantly remembers that if mana isn't absorbed from a dead monster's corpse, it turns into a wraith. A wizard who hunts monsters would never be ignorant of that fact, which leads him to a chilling conclusion. A wizard killed the original monster. But why would they leave it to become a wraith? Does this wizard truly not know something so basic? He quickly dismisses the idea of a novice knight being capable of killing such a monster in the first place, solidifying his theory. Kiorn gathers a sphere of yellow energy between his hands. He wonders if they had some other, unknown intention, but either way, he has to destroy this thing. He unleashes a massive beam of yellow energy, and the blast surges across the landscape. The energy strikes the monster, but the creature remains completely unmoved, reacting with what seems like utter confusion. Kiorn stares in disbelief, realizing his magic has been nullified. Is the monster's mana vastly stronger than his own? Then something else happens in the forest ahead. Kiorn reacts with shock, shouting that it has disappeared. Is the creature trying to counter magic with magic? He looks around frantically, yelling out, demanding to know where it went. Dark shadows rise from the ground, swirling around Kiorn's feet, and the monster unleashes a devastating attack that strikes him with immense force. As he's hit, Kiorn realizes this isn't a fight a mere knight could ever contend with. At the very least, you would need to be a lower-ranked noble just to have a chance. He really thought that would work. Kiorn slides hard across the ground, barely catching himself. He can't believe he's facing a monster of this power in such a remote village. This is not what he expected. Kiorn now stands directly before the colossal monster, knowing this is likely the end. He takes a breath, refusing to die without a fight. Gritting his teeth, he resolves to pour all his mana into one hand, aiming for a desperate counterattack the moment it lunges. This is his only chance. The monster lunges, claws extended, but then, something flashes. The next second, the colossal creature collapses, defeated, and Kior is left standing, completely stunned. Terron suddenly asks if Kior is okay, making Kior jump. Terron even makes a joke about a Shepard surprise. As they walk through the forest, Kior confronts Terron, asking why he never mentioned being a wizard. Terron stays silent, so Kior changes tactics. He asks why Terron even bothered to help him back there, pointing out Terron could have just walked away and left him to die. Terron starts to explain, but Kior cuts him off. Staring at the monster's carcass, Kior demands to know why Terron is going to such extreme lengths for this village. Terron asks what he means, and Kior scoffs. He doesn't care what the village chief promised. Terron's power could earn him a fortune and comfort. Not here. Kior even laughs at the idea, calling the villagers pitiful. Terron pushes back, asking how exactly they are pitiful. Kior leans in, explaining that out on the frontier, they live in constant fear with no real protection. But then Terron hits back with a question that completely changes the dynamic. Isn't that Kior's fault? Terron looks down, explaining his philosophy. A wizard inherits divine power, so they should live with pride, protecting those without. Kior simply closes his eyes and smiles, immediately disagreeing. He tells Terron not every wizard thinks like that. Everyone has their own thoughts and their own way of living. Terron just smiles, asking if everyone truly doesn't have their own way of living. This conversation is about to get intense. Then a monstrous impact shakes the ground again. Kior shouts at the others, his voice urgent. This monster is beyond anything they can handle. He warns them only a noble could even think of fighting something like this. He orders them to get word to the village chief immediately, help with the evacuation, and promises he will stay behind to hold the line. This is a suicide mission, but even he wonders how much longer he can truly last. Kior is stunned as Terron quickly assures him that even if that last attack had landed, everything would have been fine. Kior can't believe it, pressing Terron on whether he's implying that wasn't even his full strength. He struggles to grasp how a young knight could handle a wraith that even powerful nobles can't defeat. Kior's shock deepens. This isn't just some lucky encounter he stumbled upon. It's far more than the reckless bravado of a knight on the run. He realizes he's witnessing the potential beginning of a wizard who could utterly reshape the entire world. This changes everything. Terron, completely unfazed, admits he's curious to push his own limits against the monstrous creature. Kior, now charged with energy, refuses to let Terron face it alone. He screams that no matter how immense Terron's talent is, this opponent is far too powerful, and they must combine their strength. The monster lunges, and Kior watches in shock as a powerful energy strike crashes into the beast. Kior, observing from afar, is left stunned by the sheer impact. He couldn't even react to that last attack, and feels he's only getting in the way. He grapples with what he can do, finally deciding his only path is to help Terron's hidden talent fully awaken. Terron curses, realizing his current attacks are having no effect. Kior shouts that physical attacks won't work on a wraith. When Terron asks how he's supposed to kill it, Kior demands he use fire. Terron reaches out, and Kior immediately follows up, yelling for him to use lightning. Terron focuses, unleashing a direct fire attack at the monster's eye. Kior instantly yells that it's not working, emphasizing that that's not the point. He mentally scolds himself, knowing that properly applying a wizard's power requires establishing basic causality. He can't believe Terron might not know such fundamental wizard common sense. Then, a horrifying realization hits him. Could Terron himself have been the one who killed this creature, leaving its corpse to fester and become a wraith? He also realizes Terron has never even absorbed mana in his life. He screams at Terron not to just light a fire, but to create it and then project it. Kior is utterly shocked by Terron's latent power as Terron, with a hand now blazing with fire, dashes forward at unbelievable speed. The monster, Terron unleashes a powerful strike of fire from his hand, and the monster screams, consumed by a roaring blaze. Kior yells for Terron to keep his mind focused, reminding him he has to pour mana into it, or the fire will go out. He shouts for Turan to burn everything about the monster away. Turan focuses with intense concentration, and as the monster falls, Kior declares that they have won. But Kior knows this creature, called the Wraith, is incredibly strong. It takes noble class power to even fight it. He stares, completely shocked that Terron, a shepherd from the mountains, just took it down. Turan looks at the defeated creature and asks if it's truly over now. Kior replies that if Turan doesn't want to meet another wraith, he has to absorb its mana first. Turan is unsure how, so Kior tells him to just imagine draining something into himself. Turan holds out his palm towards the dead monster, and a flare of green mana slowly comes out of its body. The green mana he channels swirls into an orb in his palm. As he concentrates on the absorption, the green mana surges through his body, illuminating his veins and nervous system with a bright glow. Turan's eyes widen in shock as he witnesses this physical change. Kior steps behind him, stating that he will experience a sense of pleasure. Turan confesses he still finds it hard to believe, even seeing it firsthand. Kior questions if this is truly Turan's first time absorbing mana. Turan tightens his grip and confirms that it is. Kior realizes something profound. He knows that after one's first awakening, mana usually grows slowly with age, and the best way to grow it is to kill monsters or wizards and absorb their mana. Kior processes the situation, stunned. This is Turan's first time absorbing mana, yet he's already able to handle magic at this level. His innate potential is on a completely different league. Kior's eyes widen as a chilling thought strikes him. Who is this young man truly? Turan holds his hand up, observing it. Kior calls out his name. Turan asks what he wants. Kior admits he's been very rude, then bows deeply, asking Turan which noble house he belongs to. Turan simply says Kior's name. Kior acknowledges him, and Turan tells him to wipe his own blood off first. Kior clutches his arm, letting out a pained sound. He then sits at a table with Turan, ready to beg for pardon for his earlier actions. Kior instantly apologizes for his perceived rudeness, feeling like he's made someone as esteemed as Turan do something beneath him. But Turan quickly cuts him off, insisting he's just a simple shepherd who doesn't even know Kior. He glares and demands Kior stop, and Kior, surprised by the intensity, backs down. He can't help but ask, though, why is such a powerful wizard living as a shepherd? This Turan explains it was his mother's last request, right up until the moment she died. Kior, now sitting across from him, presses on. Was it truly her request? Turan reveals the hidden danger of nobles below the mountain, who would only use a wizard for their power and then discard them. Kior agrees, calling Turan's mother wise, which actually surprises Turan. He expected Kior to call it overprotective parenting, but Kior knows better. This is where it goes wrong for so many. He points out the immense power wizards wield inevitably brings conflict, and he remembers it all too well. Kior vividly recalls a major war just over 20 years ago, a brutal conflict between the House of Erebion, which he served, and the Great House of Zahar. The casualties were catastrophic. Out of roughly 3,000 Erebion knights, over 900 perished. Nearly a third of them were gone. Terron can only stare in stunned silence. And heartbreakingly, everyone Kior held dear was in that third. He remembers his friend, Denver, who dreamed of opening a laundry shop after the war, and his teacher, Hartman, who always said he had so much more to learn. Kior's voice wavers as he reveals his beloved wife and son were also massacred by House Zahar. He alone made it out alive. His mother, he tells Terron, was right to an extent. A knight's life can vanish more easily and meaninglessly than a commoner's. But she was dead wrong about one crucial thing. Turan instantly feels a jolt of curiosity. What did he mean by his aptitude? Kior scratches his head, admitting it's a bit embarrassing to say in his current state, but he considers himself a fairly skilled knight. Yet, Turan effortlessly destroyed a monster called the Wraith, something even Kior himself couldn't bring down. This changes everything. Kiorn declares Turan's potential isn't just that of a knight. No, at minimum, Turan is noble level, possessing at least upper-tier aptitude among them. Had his mother lied when she said he was a knight? Kiorn explains that on rare occasions, a child worse than a knight was. Kiorn pushes Turan to leave, arguing that humans desperately need more nobles and knights to truly conquer the world. But why would Turan be the one to do it? Kiorn then drops a bomb. The world is on knife's edge. Races exiled by the gods plot their return. And as if that's not enough, the nobles are tearing each other apart with endless wars. Suddenly, the door swings open, and Kiorn steps inside, declaring that this era desperately needs strong, kind nobles like Turan. But he quickly challenges Turan. Is he really satisfied just living as a shepherd? Turan doesn't say a word, but his silence speaks volumes. Finally, Turan breaks the quiet, asking Kiorn what he could possibly gain by leaving his quiet life behind, venturing down the mountain. Kiorn smiles, explaining it all depends on what Turan truly desires. He lists everything from immense wealth, undeniable fame, and absolute authority to the bonds of family or true friendship. But then he delivers the crucial blow. None of those things, he says, are truly possible to achieve right here, in this remote mountain. This kid is different. He paints a picture for Turan, exploring the unknown, fighting monsters, maybe even joining a powerful house. This isn't just talk. Kiorn sees a path to true power for him. Turan, now standing among the sheep, realizes Kiorn is right. Herding sheep suddenly seems incredibly boring, and for the first time, the world outside sparks a genuine, powerful curiosity. His life is about to change. Kiorn, momentarily concerned he's overhyping it, quickly pivots. He needs to know more about Turan, specifically asking about his bloodline ability. But Turan has no idea what that even is, clarifying that a bloodline ability is a unique trait inherited from the Freyans, the ultimate marker distinguishing nobles from mere knights. This is crucial information, but what does it mean for Turan? Is there any spell that comes too easily or an outstanding skill he has without even using magic? Turan, clenching his fist, counters with his own desperate question. Is his strength just mana, or is he actually powerful? Turan reveals two things: an exceptional sense of smell and incredible skill with thrown stones. Kiorn confirms the smell could be a bloodline ability, and the throwing skill is a common trait of House Erebion. This is a massive clue. Turan demands more answers, and Kiorn agrees, but Turan suddenly addresses him with a respectful sir. Kiorn is puzzled, but Turan has an idea. He thinks he knows which noble house abilities align with. The reveal is coming. Kiorn nods, demanding the name of the house. Turan explains this powerful family are pursuers and hunters, identifying them as House Sahar, the house known for that war. Turan's mind races with intense questions about House Sahar and his own bloodline, especially if he is truly connected to the Elder's enemies. This internal turmoil makes him gulp when he sees Kiorn standing nearby, creating a deep conflict within him. Turan struggles with whether he should apologize to Kiorn, even as he tries to rationalize that he isn't responsible for the actions of unknown relatives who are practically strangers. Then, Kiorn calls out Turan's name, and Turan instantly acknowledges him as elder. Kiorn places a steady hand on Turan's shoulder, a gesture that carries significant weight. Turan immediately voices his conflicted feelings, pointing out that Kiorn himself didn't participate in the war. But Kiorn dismisses this, explaining it's a situation for adults, and that trying to wash blood with blood would only perpetuate an endless cycle of fighting. Turan then asks Kiorn if he has any regrets, specifically about telling him to go down the hill long ago. He explains that if Turan pursues power, his outstanding abilities would inevitably lead him to join the Zahar family. However, Kiorn adds that he trusts Turan's character completely. Turan seeks more clarification, and Kiorn reveals the depth of his trust. He reminds Turan that he once saved Kiorn, even while risking everything by revealing an identity he had hidden his whole life. Kiorn then proposes a staggering idea: If someone of Turan's goodness and character were to rise to a high position within the Zahar family, it might actually prevent such a terrible war from happening again. This profound suggestion leaves Terron in stunned silence. Kior tells him not to think too seriously, noting that Turan still hasn't decided whether to join the Zahar family. But Turan's thoughts suddenly solidify. He tells Kior he wants to try going down the mountain, embracing the path Kior described. Kior agrees that it's a good decision, but insists it shouldn't be right away. Turan readily agrees to wait, promising he will only begin his journey once Kior's injury has completely healed. Kior smiles, praising Turan for being truly kind after their earlier encounter, noting he's only slightly scratched. But then Kior shifts gears, dropping a bombshell. Mana isn't just helpful for magic, it's absolutely required. For that reason, he explains, mana is often called the key to omnipotence. Turan muses on the term, quickly realizing it's not actual omnipotence. Magic needs mana that specifically corresponds to it, he points out. So what exactly is the standard for matching mana to magic? Kior promises an immediate explanation, holding up 3 fingers. The difficulty of magic, he reveals, is primarily decided by 3 crucial factors: bloodline, affinity, and causality. This is where it gets interesting. The first factor, bloodline, is all about the lineage you're born into. It's a huge deal for most nobles who aren't knights. Kior then uses himself as an example, pointing out that Terron would struggle to heal his wounds with magic. Turan instantly confirms it. Kior explains that for a bloodline, like the Ravistas from the south, healing is something they can do without any training at all. It's just power in their blood. Terron quickly moves on to the second concept, affinity. Kior explains it can also be thought of as familiarity. Mages simply perform tasks more easily if they prefer them or are used to doing them. Terron instantly gets it, giving the perfect example. He made a fireball earlier, as if he were simply throwing a rock. Kior agrees, confirming that a simple flame wouldn't have had that level of speed or firepower. Kior introduces the last and most crucial concept, causality. Kior even admits that he doesn't fully understand it himself. He presents a terrifying hypothetical. What would happen if Terron tried to kill him directly using only mana? Terron thinks for a moment, replying that probably some light would shine from Kior's head, and that would be the extent of it. Kior explains that this phenomenon occurs from a lack of causality. It happens when there's no appropriate cause for a desired outcome, or when the goal is excessively difficult. Terron's eyes widen. He thinks he's starting to understand. If he wanted to kill someone, he needed to provide a cause of death, like creating and shooting flames, rather than just spending mana wishing them dead. He even conjures a small flame over his mug, realizing creating fire is much more natural than directly igniting something with a wish. Kior yells in agreement, telling Terron he could have become a scholar instead of a mage. But Terron still has questions. Why do magical beasts need something like that, especially when he can control ordinary animals so easily? Kior's answer is simple. It's because of their mana. And with that, the lesson continues, time flying by as they delve deeper into the secrets of magic. Magic is never easy, Terron remarks, as Kior explains that an excellent mage doesn't just use mana, but understands the deep principles behind it. Terron instantly asks if the legendary Zahar bloodline has special magic, hinting at a power he might possess. Kior reveals their hidden skill, mastery over stealth and tracking. He challenges Terron to try it right then. Terron accepts, his mind racing with the desire to vanish completely, wishing for no sound or scent to escape him. He closes his eyes, and a shimmering mist begins to rise, swirling around his body. Did it work? He asks, his voice barely a whisper, creating instant tension. Kior looks towards the sound, standing alone in the center of the room as Terron slowly, impossibly, fades from view. Kior confirms his success, admitting he can no longer see him at all. Then, Terron phases back into visibility, appearing as suddenly as he vanished. Kior notes the chilling effectiveness of the ability, declaring it a frightening power he hasn't seen in a long time. During the Great War, he recalls, even the fearsome Erebion knights dreaded this very power above all else. It seems unfairly potent, he admits, but quickly reminds Terron that no ability is truly invincible. Now, he plans to teach Terron advanced magic training methods. But Terron, ever practical, questions him directly. Isn't Kior teaching too much to a mage from an enemy family? Kior answers simply, reminding him that Terron saved his life and even treated his wounds, then explains he trusts Terron's character above all else. Later, they arrive at the village, only to be met by the enraged shouts of the village chief. He yells, demanding to know if Terron is truly selling his sheep and abandoning them, asking who will shepherd the flocks now. Terron stands unflinchingly in the middle of the path, his backpack already on, ready for his journey. The village chief presses him, demanding to know how he could make such a massive decision without consulting anyone. Terron's response is cold and absolute. He tells them they will have to find a new shepherd on their own, asking why his property is any of their concern. Then he issues a direct threat. Either they buy his sheep at a fair price, or he will simply release every single one and leave. The village chief and another villager watch him in stunned silence as he turns his back on them. Terron adds that they are free to try and capture the sheep themselves, though it would be an incredibly difficult task. A large villager calls out in a panic to the village chief, who grinds his teeth, realizing Terron is a man who always keeps his word. There is no point in irritating him further. He finally relents, saying it's fine, and hands Terron a heavy pouch of coins. He tells Terron to do whatever he wants, whether he stays or leaves, as Terron and Kior walk away from the village together. Terron casually mentions that the villagers still owe Kior compensation after everything. Terron asks Kior if he should go collect their reward, but Kior flat out refuses. He reminds Terron that he was the one who took down the magical beast, so he has no intention of claiming a share. Terron understands, deciding it's time to move on. Their journey together ends here. Kior apologizes for declining to travel further with Terron, admitting he prefers to be alone. Terron brushes it off, thanking him for everything. As Kior turns to leave, he calls out Terron's name, telling him to take care. Terron, calling him elder, hopes they'll meet again with smiles, and watches Kior go, a deep sense of longing already starting to settle in. Only much later does Terron understand why he didn't want the old knight to address him formally. He realizes he's been secretly craving a father figure, someone who could be a true role model, despite never lacking his mother's affection. This isn't just a goodbye. It's a silent parting from something he unconsciously needed. Now alone, Terron walks a dusty path, the wind howling around him. He spots figures in the distance, instantly wondering if they are traveling merchants. This could be good, he thinks, taking a confident step forward. He decides to approach them, hoping for directions to the nearest city. But this simple decision is about to change everything for him. An old man from the group immediately challenges him, demanding to know who he is to block their way. Terron calmly explains he's a lone traveler, asking for the closest city. The old man tells him to follow their road back to reach a city called Muri. Terron seems confused for a moment, then says he understands, thanking them before turning to leave. But the old man is not done with him, stepping forward to stop him dead in his tracks. This is where things start to go sideways. The old man asks if Terron really thinks he can just take information and leave. Terron, clearly bewildered, asks what he should do then. The old man's answer is chilling. If you receive something, you must give something in return. This seemingly simple exchange quickly turns sinister as the old man's men draw their swords, instantly surrounding Terron. He's walked right into a trap. A bandit behind Terron barks orders for him to hand over his bulging bag. Terron, still trying to process, asks directly if they are bandits. The lead bandit just laughs, mocking Terron's naivety. He reminds Terron they are in a wasteland where disappearance is never questioned. He tells Terron to take off his bag and cloak now, while they're still being nice. He casually adds that killing him and stripping his body would be far too messy and inconvenient. The threat is clear: cooperate or die. Turan looks down, calmly stating that he understands. But his mind is racing, realizing he's facing bandits who don't hesitate to kill. The situation has just escalated from robbery to a fight for survival. Terron states, and what he says next is crucial to understanding the journey he's on right now. Even with a sword at his throat, Terron just calmly smiles, declaring he will use these men for practice. This is an insane declaration, especially considering his current situation. One bandit scoffs, mocking Terron and calling him a lunatic for talking like a wizard. His boss agrees, completely underestimating the threat. They have no idea what's coming. But Terron just gathers green energy in his hand, then unleashes a powerful blast of wind, sending the men flying and screaming in terror. Their underestimation instantly backfires. Terron, however, is more focused on his own power. He realizes shaping and amplifying the wind with his hand is far more efficient, using significantly less mana than he thought possible. This is a massive breakthrough for him. Meanwhile, one of the defeated men groans, completely baffled by what just happened. Terron isn't done yet. He effortlessly manipulates water from a bottle, letting it flow over his fingers before forming several menacing ice shards that hover around him. A hooded man stares in complete shock at this impossible display. He instantly fires the ice shards, striking his opponents who cry out in pain. But Terron internally questions the spell's effectiveness, wondering if it's only useful with abundant water. He admits that throwing stones honestly feels faster and stronger right now. Suddenly, the one-eyed man kneels, begging for forgiveness and pleading that they had no idea he was a wizard. The other bandits quickly join him, promising anything Terron wants if he just spares their lives. Their lives are absolutely on the line. Terron simply takes a single step forward. The one-eyed man stares in utter disbelief, whispering that it's impossible. He looks around at the devastation, asking if they are all dead. Terron stands over the bandit, ready to ask the one question that truly matters. The bandit, absolutely terrified, stammers an answer, calling Terron a wizard and promising to say anything. Terron presses him, asking why they attacked without a plan, pointing out any lone traveler could be someone dangerous, just like him now. The bandit finally reveals it. They attacked because Terron bowed his head. Even when they spoke rudely, Terron kept greeting them politely, which made them assume he was just an ordinary person. Terron thanks him, realizing this is a useful lesson, but this knowledge comes with a heavy price. The bandit desperately asks if Terron will truly spare his life. But then, a memory flashes through Terron's mind of Kior's words. Kior had told him he would meet many people, and there was something he absolutely needed to remember. Kior stands with a backpack, a sword resting on a nearby table, as he strongly advises Terron never to show mercy to scum like bandits, people who won't hesitate to harm others for their own profit. He explains that the reason he's speaking so firmly is crucial, and Terron realizes he finally understands. Terron now stands over a fallen body, the weight of Kior's words heavy in his mind. He understands that a life spared out of pity could easily end up harming 10 good people later on. He tells himself he has stalled long enough. The clear wheel tracks left by the merchants turned bandits cut across the sand, a path of no return. One thought burns sharply in his mind. He's just killed people. Guilt washes over him, but he knows he could not have just let them go. Terron reflects on the bandits he just escaped, knowing people who rob and kill without hesitation will always strike again. But as Kior's teachings echo in his mind, his chaotic heart finally settles. He stands at the edge of a cliff, gazing at the horizon, realizing he has finally arrived in a completely new world. This journey is only just beginning, and he has no idea what awaits him. He looks around, whispering in awe at the sheer scale of Muri, the small city he's finally reached. Walking through the crowded streets, he's stunned by the sheer number of people and the architecture unlike anything he's ever seen. This is truly his first city experience, and it's already overwhelming. Turan approaches a fruit stall, remembering Kior's advice to find an in first. But when he tells the vendor he isn't buying anything, the vendor instantly turns hostile. He's yelled at to get lost, and Terron can only stare in silence, wondering if there's some unspoken city rule he's missing. To break the tension, Terron points at the fruit and asks the price. 2 dupit, the vendor replies, and Terron repeats the unfamiliar term, confused. The vendor immediately notices he's an outsider, explaining that other coins work too. He finally drops a coin into the vendor's hand, asking for directions to the inn, and the vendor points him toward the biggest one in the city, a place with a blue roof just behind the cape shop. Inside, Lena, the inn staff, welcomes Turan with a warm smile, even complimenting him. He asks the price, and she tells him it's 16 dupit for a night, which he quickly accepts. But as he hands over a pouch of coins, he immediately shifts the conversation, asking about something far more important. Any monsters nearby with a bounty on them. Lena repeats monster in surprise, a sudden tension filling the air. Turan needs to hunt monsters, not just for money, but to absorb their mana, a critical step in his journey. This is his entire purpose. Lena, however, presses him, reminding him that nothing in this world is free, implying information comes at a price. He then asks about the city hall, wondering what it even is, leaving Lena completely stunned that he doesn't know about such a basic concept. This is where things get interesting. Lena explains that city halls are where all the public affairs go down, overseen by the city lord's own officials. Turan, clearly from the countryside, just takes it all in. Lena points out it's too late now. But if you want a monster bounty, he should hit up City Hall tomorrow. Then she throws a curveball. Is he a monster hunter too? This changes everything. Terron is completely new to this, asking what a monster hunter even is. Lena then reveals an old belief. If an ordinary person hunts monsters, they become a wizard. She asks if Terron wants to become one too. But before he can answer, Midden jumps in, dismissing it as superstition. Then, in the very next breath, Midden insists it's a real fact, something he's seen with his own eyes. A voice from the tavern shouts Midden's name, but Midden just grins, declaring he won't die until he becomes a wizard. Terron, however, can't let it go. He needs to know more about this wizard-making monster hunt. Midden explains it simply. Wizards get stronger by hunting monsters, so it only makes sense that an ordinary person could become a wizard just by killing one. He openly admits his group, and the other hunters cheering with them, are all after that very goal. Turan, ever observant, immediately notices something crucial. He asks if that means someone among them is already a wizard, pointing out that in this city, there's only the Lord's wizard and his 3 subordinates. Midden can't help but notice Turan's worn-out gear, questioning if he even hunts monsters or has a weapon. Turan simply raises his sling, confirming it's his. Midden acknowledges the sling looks well used, effective for launching egg-sized objects, and muses it could be good for hunting smaller monsters like rabbits or foxes. Then, he extends an invitation. Join their hunt. They could use another shooter, he says. Terron smiles, but declines the offer. Later, alone in his dark room, Terron lies on the bed, deciding there's no reason for him to hunt with them. He lets out a sigh, reflecting on the sheer chaos of the day, still barely believing he actually left his village. Wondering what happens next, when suddenly, a crackle of blue energy surrounds his hand. Just then, a knock comes from the door. Terron shifts, asks who it is, but gets no reply. He reminds himself that even at an inn, he cannot let his guard down. Kior's words echo in his mind, and he knows they are true. Kior warns Turan that a city is never automatically safe, urging him to never let his guard down. Turan agrees, but he has no idea what's coming. Turan slowly opens his door, his eyes widening in surprise when he sees Lena already inside. He calls out her name, asking if she was asleep, but he's about to get a much different answer. Lena stands there, explaining she thought the room might be cold, so she came to keep him warm. Turan stares back in stunned silence, then asks her what exactly she means by that. Lena just smiles suggestively and starts to undo her clothing, making her intentions incredibly clear. Turan, still processing, can only stare as she continues. Lena then steps closer, making an explicit offer. For a small amount of money, she'll do whatever he wants. But Turan asks her what happens if there's nothing he wants from her. Lena leans in close, telling Turan not to lie, claiming she can tell just by looking at his face. But then she suddenly stares at Turan in shock. What did he just do? Turan's mind flashes back to Kior's desperate yell, a warning not to make a terrible mistake. Kior had specifically cautioned him about in maids and prostitutes, saying they often carry STDs. While they might have strong resistance, Turan could still pass it on to another innocent woman later. Kior's voice echoes in his mind, urging him not to let desire trap him into something he'd regret. Lena quietly walks down the stairs, leaving Turan alone. He lies back on the bed, realizing cities aren't easy to live in at all. Between the fruit shop earlier and Lena, it seems like even small bits of information and conversation come with a price. Cities, he thinks, are truly cold-hearted. Meanwhile, Turan actually spoke to his boss, stating he had something he was curious about. In another place entirely, Midden's companion asks him why he even bothered try to bring Turan along earlier, clearly not seeing Turan as much help. Midden scoffs, saying Turan has a cocky mouth and would be perfect monster bait. Yet, Midden admits Turan reminds him a little of his younger self. He worries about Turan hunting with such a weapon, thinking that if Turan just stays by his side, he might survive a little longer. Midden's companion just shakes his head, calling Midden too good-hearted for a monster hunter. Back in his room, Turan quietly lies in bed. Maybe, he thinks, the city isn't as cold-hearted as he first imagined. Now, Turan finds himself behind a service counter, offering a greeting and asking how he can assist. The person at the front desk greets him back, but then immediately questions if he's an official. They ask what he even looks like then. Turan calmly explains he's here to hunt monsters, causing the front desk to repeat the word, completely surprised. This changes everything. Kior just delivered a harsh truth to Turan, explaining that the world has absolutely no reason to be kind to him. Turan immediately asks why, and Kior's answer is clear. It's all about perspective. But then, Kior offers a startlingly simple way for Turan to force kindness from others. All he has to do is reveal that he's a wizard, and ordinary people will instantly bow in respect. Now Turan finds himself at a front desk, where a clerk hands him a document he's only allowed to look at, not keep. What could possibly be so sensitive? Turan identifies a drawing of a crow monster, and the clerk confirms it with a dismissive, sarcastic jab. The clerk, writing intently, then lays down the law. Every monster corpse, no matter how rare or unlikely, must be brought into the city. Here's the critical part. If a wizard doesn't disperse its mana, that monster will inevitably become a wraith. And abandoning a corpse carries the maximum penalty of execution under city law. This is where it goes wrong. Turan's face hardens. He firmly states he knows exactly what happens when a monster becomes a wraith. He tells himself he cannot repeat that same mistake, revealing a dark history he clearly carries. The clerk just scoffs, asking if Turan truly believes knights, who supposedly have no time to spare, are going to hunt every single monster. Turan walks away, internally dismissing monster hunting as a thug's job for people like the village chief, claiming true knights only maintain public order. This immediately sets up a contrast in Turan's mindset. As Turan leaves the hall, the village chief remains by his desk. The receptionist watches him go, assuming he's gone for good. He silently predicts another body will soon join the countless others outside the city gates. But the creature on the desk, its eye fixed and lifeless, tells a different story. A monstrous carcass, dead on the documents with a gaping hole through its chest. The receptionist stares in stunned disbelief. "No way," he whispers. "How is this even possible?" Just then, Terron reappears. The receptionist stammers, asking if Turan really brought that back, alone and so fast. Turan confirms it with a simple nod, asking about his bounty. The stunned receptionist quickly hands over a bag of coins, Urging Turan to get some rest after such a feat, Turan accepts it, but his intentions are far from resting. Other men gather, marveling at the carcass, especially how its blade wings remain perfectly intact. The receptionist, still reeling, can barely process how anyone could bring down a blade crow in such pristine condition. Then he notices Terron is still standing there. Confused, he asks if Terron needs anything else. Terron simply asks, "Are there any other monsters worth hunting?" The clerk, shocked, warns him not to even joke about hunting more. But Terron isn't joking. Now, in a bustling restaurant, Lena stares at Terron, who is devouring plate after plate. She can't believe he defeated 30 monsters in just 3 days, consuming the most expensive items on the menu. She asks if he's earned a fortune, but Turan shakes his head. Money is secondary. His true goal is the monster's mana, and thanks to it, he's definitely become stronger. Turan quietly acknowledges to himself that his mana has increased several-fold since his encounter with Kior, but he also feels a distinct limit. Getting any stronger, purely from the mana of weak monsters, is becoming increasingly difficult. Lena asks what's wrong, snapping him out of his thoughts. Terron, ever so direct, asks if she stole a bite of his food, to which she points out he devoured everything himself. A cook chuckles, amazed at how much the skinny Terron can eat, genuinely happy he enjoyed the meal. As Terron pushes back his chair, a voice promises an even better meal next time. But suddenly, a hand clamps onto his shoulder from behind. Midden's subordinates yank him back, mocking him for eating alone, calling him a skinny runt with his newfound wealth. They suggest he spare some charity for his partners. Turan's response is immediate. Turan instantly launches forward, striking one of the men across the face. He curses and falls back as another shouts insults, but Turan just retorts, wondering if they actually didn't want any charity after all. The attacker lunges back with a massive fist, yelling at Turan to stop being cocky, but it's a big mistake. Turan counters with a swift, powerful strike to the man's midsection, sending him flying across the room and screaming in surprise. Another assailant grabs a wooden chair, ready to swing it, but freezes mid-motion. Turan's hand clamps down firmly on his head, and cold sweat drips onto his face, signaling that things are about to get even worse. Lena grits her teeth and shouts at them all, telling them not to fight in the inn. Suddenly, Midden bows deeply, offering a sincere apology for everything that just happened. Turan stands in the doorway, explaining he's given both of his men a proper scolding, assuring Midden this will never happen again. But Midden remains bowed, a heavy silence hanging in the air as he admits they've been extremely tight on money lately. He suggests they likely just got jealous when they saw Turan, which only increases the tension. Midden then turns to the 2 men behind him, yelling for them to apologize already, and they stammer out their apologies, clearly shaken. Turan looks at Midden, asking if things are really that hard for them, and Midden scratches his head, admitting they've been limited. He drops a bombshell. They won't even be able to pay the room fee in 3 days, though he quickly adds that it's their own problem. But Turan has other plans. He hands Midden a small pouch, explaining its repayment for the kindness Midden showed earlier when he worried and tried to help Turan. Midden is stunned, asking how Turan even knew about that, and Turan just smiles. He reveals there's no such thing as a free gift. He only asks for some crucial information in return. Midden's grin widens, promising to share everything he knows, and this changes everything for Turan. The town sits quietly under a bright sky, but Turan is already in a forest clearing, the wind blowing past him as he realizes this might be his very last hunt in the city. He reflects on all the information Midden just gave him about the next city, realizing it's time to move on. The details have proven far more useful than he ever expected. Turan recognizes Midden's innate kindness and notes that, unlike the seasoned Kior, Midden's inexperience makes him purer and more genuine, a realization that could impact Turan's own future decisions. Turan sniffs the air, a terrible hunch creeping in, and he bolts through the forest, leaping over everything in his path. He stops at a tree trunk, its bark shredded by vicious claw marks. The silence is broken only by his own heavy breathing as Turan finds a body slumped against a tree, drenched in blood. He recognizes the face, a sickening feeling settling in his gut. This isn't just anyone. Silver coins lay scattered in the fresh pool of blood near a lifeless hand. It's Midden. Turan kneels, desperate, demanding to know what happened here. With his last breath, Midden struggles, coughs, and whispers one word. Turan leans closer, repeating it in disbelief. Rabbit? Then a sickening crunch reaches his ears. It's not just a rabbit. This thing is a monster, a creature of pure nightmare. Before Terron can even process the shock, the beast lunges. Turan barely dodges, the wind of its attack chilling him to the bone. He really thought that would work. The monster lands, kicking up a cloud of dust, and Terron doesn't hesitate. He unleashes a sharp, crescent wave of blue energy. It's a direct hit, but the creature barely falters. Turan instantly realizes this monster is accustomed to such attacks, expertly skidding across the dirt, digging its claws in to absorb the impact. This isn't going to be easy. Turan holds his ground, staring up at the towering beast. But then, something unexpected happens. The monster's eyes widen, and a sudden gust of wind seems to signal its retreat. It bolts, kicking up dust as it scrambles away, but Turan is faster. He leaps, closing the distance in an instant, plunging his blade deep into the monster's throat. A piercing shriek fills the air as Turan lands, the creature collapsing behind him. But the fight isn't over. The monster, wounded and enraged, lunges again, slamming into a tree trunk, snarling and slashing frantically. Turan dashes through the forest, a streak of light, as the beast crashes through trees, its shriek turning into a pained squeak. Blood drips from its wounded leg, and finally, after a desperate struggle, it collapses to the ground. Turan stands over the dead monster, reaching out a hand. This is where he does something completely unexpected. He starts to absorb its mana. What he finds shocks him to his core. The amount is astronomical, far greater than even the leopard monster he faced before. He can barely believe it. This changes everything. But then, a voice breaks through his thoughts. In a corner, Midden's wounded subordinate looks up at him, his voice weak, asking a single, piercing question that stops Terron cold. Are you a wizard? Terron calmly confirms it. Yes, I am a wizard. The wounded man, still stunned, demands to know why Terron has been hiding his true identity. But Terron cuts him off, his gaze softening as he asks about the fallen. He wants to know if any of the four had families so he can ensure their belongings are returned. Tears well in the man's eyes. Midden's voice echoes in Terron's mind, a final whisper that he is utterly alone in the world. But Midden also leaves him a beacon of hope, a story of a great city called Orum, home to a legendary library. This library holds thousands upon thousands of books, a treasure trove of knowledge Terron can only dream of. Terron's eyes light up, a rare spark of interest in his otherwise grim existence. But Midden adds a crucial detail, a hidden obstacle. Not just anyone can enter. The library is exclusively for wizards. This revelation silences Terron, his mind already racing with possibilities. Not long after, Terron makes his decision. He declares he's going to Orum, the great city Midden spoke of. This is his new mission, his only path forward. He stands over Midden's grave, whispering a final farewell. With a heavy heart, Terron begins his journey, hoping his friend finds peace wherever he is now. As he travels, Terron passes through a small town, surprised by its unexpected bustle. He realizes how much he still needs to learn about the world outside his isolated life. Finally, he reaches the great city Orum. The sheer number of people trying to enter is overwhelming, making him realize this city operates on a scale he's never seen, with a stricter system than he anticipated. Getting in won't be easy. Suddenly, a guard shouts for him to halt, blocking his path. Entry is instantly denied. The guard dismisses Turan, judging him by his filthy, tattered clothes, telling him to clean himself before daring to approach the city gates again. This is a humiliating start to his grand journey. Despite the setback, Turan spots his true destination in the distance, the library Min described. He feels the immense power radiating from it, making him wonder if it was truly built with magic. He takes a deep breath and approaches the library guards, determined. He calmly states his desire to enter, but the guards immediately shut him down, repeating the rule: only wizards are allowed inside. That's when Terron drops a bombshell, insisting he is a wizard, leaving the guards utterly speechless. Before they can even react, a man named Kenya steps forward, accusing Terron of impersonating a wizard. Kenya scoffs at Terron's appearance, instantly dismissing him, then flexes his own power, a clear sign of his true wizardry. This is a direct challenge, and the stakes just got much higher. Terron remembers, wizards can sense one another's mana and even gauge strength at a glance. So, with a hint of curiosity, he releases just a small portion of his own power. Kenya reacts immediately, announcing he's contacting the city's wizard authorities. To everyone's surprise, Terron calmly agrees. He lets out a long, weary sigh. Terron thought this would be a much simpler process, but clearly he was wrong. Moments later, the situation takes an unexpected turn. Maids are washing his hair, then diligently scrubbing his skin clean. This is definitely not what he anticipated, but the next steps are completely unknown. Terron sits in a luxurious bath, maids surrounding him, but his mind is elsewhere, trying to piece together how he ended up in this absurd situation. He turns to the maids, his voice cutting through the silence, and tells them to stop. A head maid quickly stammers out an agreement, clearly flustered. Terron asks if it would be a problem if he just washed himself, a simple request that suddenly becomes incredibly complicated. The headmaid instantly explains the unthinkable consequences. They will be severely punished if they fail to properly attend to such an esteemed guest. Turan looks away, the weight of their fate now resting on his shoulders. He tells them to do whatever they want, a reluctant command that leaves him trapped in a golden cage. The maids thank him profusely, oblivious to the deeper conflict brewing within their guest. Turan steps out, looking like a true noble guest, and immediately a maid gasps, covering her mouth in shock. He ties his hair back, confused, wondering if something is on his face, but the maids quickly bow, apologizing for being stunned by his unexpected beauty. Terron, still puzzled, tells them not to be so formal, but he can't shake the feeling that something bigger is going on. Azella strides towards him, a servant trailing behind her, and immediately asks if he's the guest who looked like a beggar just moments ago. She points out he now looks like a prince, making her servant cringe, but Azella doesn't care. Turan introduces himself. Then Azella reveals her name before instantly probing about his noble house. He explains it's complicated, unable to reveal his true lineage, and Azella simply hums, deciding it's a shame he's being so secretive. Azella, clearly sensing he's hiding something, smirks and decides to play a game. Power swirls around her, as she demands he show her what he's truly capable of. Terron, unwavering, channels his own strength, and suddenly, raw energy erupts from both of them, clashing violently. The force of the magic sweeps past the screaming servant, who braces with a guard and head housemaid, as blue energy dissipates against the ceiling. Turan lets out a long, relieved sigh, but Azella just stares, whispers in pure amazement, and then laughs as she realizes her hands are actually shaking. She calls out to him, looks him dead in the eye, and asks the most unexpected question. "Do you want to marry me?" Turan stares at her in stunned silence, completely unable to process the sudden, insane proposal. Azella laughs, claiming it was just a joke to someone off-screen, but then she advises Turan to actually think about it, hinting that the seat next to her is currently empty. As Azella walks away with her servant, Turan narrows his eyes, his hand trembling uncontrollably. He realizes Azella's mana is at least on par with his own, leaving him wondering if this kind of power is even considered normal in this place. Then, he's led into an ornate office, standing before Rug Voltas, who sits behind a grand desk. Rug Voltas welcomes him, asking if he already knows his name, and Terron introduces himself, ready for whatever comes next. Rug Voltas repeats the name and asks. Rug Voltas lays it all out for Terron, asking point-blank if he truly intends to use the library. He explains that many people have visited lately, all chasing strange rumors, so he wants to clarify things now, before anyone gets the wrong idea. There is no incredible ancient magic hidden here, nor any secret method to instantly boost mana. Turan stands in the office, completely unfazed. He insists this arrangement is perfectly fine because he never wanted anything like that to begin with. Rug Voltas makes it clear he will not stop Turan if he still wants to proceed, adding that the records hold no confidential information related to their house. But he advises Turan that it has grown late, telling him to rest and return the following day. Turan, feeling the weight of the moment, expresses his sincere gratitude, promising he will not forget the kindness shown to him. The next morning, Turan arrives at the towering structure. A guard confirms his entry pass and welcomes him to the Sky Library itself. Sentries bow as he approaches the grand entrance, and the ornate doors creak as they slowly open. Turan stares ahead, his eyes wide with anticipation, utterly speechless. This place is even more than he imagined. He stands at the base of a magnificent spiral staircase that winds endlessly upwards, vanishing into a bright skylight. Turan walks through the center of the library, past long tables and endless rows of books, taking all in. He has finally reached his destination. Suddenly, a librarian with long dark hair greets Turan with a cheerful welcome, raising her arm as she introduces herself. She smiles, announcing that she will explain the rules for using the library, by order of the Lord himself. She assures him the rules are simple. Turan, watching her, cannot help but wonder if such a small child is truly the librarian. The librarian declares the first rule is to compensate for any damage, and the second is that no books can be taken out. But then, she leans in close to Terron, a little too close, and adds that she will be watching him the entire time he uses the library. Terron instantly leans back, agreeing to the rules, but asks if she could perhaps stand a bit further away while he reads, because he feels uncomfortable. As they walk through the massive library, Terron asks if she has read all the books, since she is the librarian. She confirms it, without a moment of hesitation, boasting that finding things for people is her specialty. The librarian then asks what he is looking for, suggesting romance or history as she gestures to the vast, stretching rows of bookshelves. She continues her thought, noting that since he is young, she has other suggestions. She asks if he is looking for something erotic. Terron remains silent for a beat, processing that. But then, he explains that he wants to learn basic common sense about the world. The librarian pauses, clearly surprised by his request. Moments later, a heavy stack of books drops onto the table. The librarian notes that many of these are hundreds of years old and might not suit his needs, but she suggests a specific section that might help. He thanks her, and she welcomes him to begin. Terron pulls a book from the shelf, and for the first time, he truly understands what a book is. He whispers in amazement as he flips through the pages. From that moment, his entire routine changes. Every day, Terron is in the library, completely immersed. He devours knowledge, learning everything from world geography and the various races to the intricate etiquette of wizards. He studies how items are manufactured, the details of terrifying monsters, and even relics from the ancient old empire. With each new fact, his world, once a complete mystery, grows clearer and more vivid. But then Rug Voltas finds him, praising his excellent use of the library. He explains that allowing Turan access was an act of goodwill separate from his noble status, and now it's time for payment. Turan instantly feels a chill, asking what he needs. Rug Voltas reveals that a monster has appeared north of Orum, relentlessly attacking travelers. Turan barely hesitates, asking if he wants him to hunt it. This is where it goes wrong. Rug Voltas confirms 4 knights sent to subjugate it never returned, They were eaten. The stakes instantly skyrocket. Rubbing his forehead, Rug Voltas admits their house can only mobilize 2 people, subtly implying Terron is their only real option. He's cornered. Terron, however, agrees, confidently stating that protecting people is a wizard's duty. But something feels off. Terron can't shake the butler's earlier question about wizards being idle. He knows wizards usually avoid getting involved in these kinds of messy affairs, and this just feels wrong. Rug Voltas quickly explains that the monster has blocked a crucial trade route for Orum for 10 days, and it needs to be opened immediately. That's when Turan smirks. He instantly connects the dots. 10 days ago, he hadn't even arrived in Orum. This whole setup, the ready access to the library, it was all a calculated play to get him into this exact situation. Soon, Turan, Azella, Marvin, and a company of knights march out from the fortress gates. Azella leads the way, openly criticizing her father for sending a guest on such a dangerous hunt and questioning their own reliability. She's not blaming anyone. She insists, just pointing out her father's knack for making a big fuss. Marvin lets out an awkward laugh, quickly suggesting that calling the Lord a troublemaker might be a bit excessive. Azella is not having any of it, quickly shutting Marvin down and telling him to drop whatever he was talking about. Ignoring her, Marvin turns to Terron, introducing himself formally and expressing his anticipation for their future work together. But as they walk, Marvin can't help himself. He leans in close, quietly asking Terron if he has any interest in his sister. Terron's answer is a simple, firm no, and Marvin visibly relaxes, muttering how good that is to hear. Suddenly, their casual stroll is cut short as soldiers block their path. Ahead, the road is a scene of utter devastation. A shattered carriage lies in pieces, its cargo strewn everywhere, leaving no doubt that something violent just happened here. The soldiers are already speculating, wondering if it's the work of the creature, and one confirms it's highly probable. They explain that travel north was strictly forbidden, meaning these victims must have come from the south, directly into the monster's path. Terron, however, doesn't speak. He just stands there, silently absorbing every single detail of the wreckage. He's looking for something specific. Then, Terron makes his first move. He calmly announces the creature's identity, a monkey. Azella repeats it, the skepticism clear in her voice. How could a monkey cause this much damage? But Terron just crouches down, pointing to a massive palm print in the soil, explaining exactly how it was made. He quickly examines the surrounding tracks, piecing together the entire attack. The creature ambushed these merchants, then retreated deep into the forest, and Terron knows they can find it, simply by following the trail it left behind. Azella frowns, admitting her tracking magic isn't cut out for this kind of work. Marvin quickly agrees, claiming he can't do it either. Before anyone else can even suggest an alternative, Terron steps forward. He offers to track the creature himself. Azella, intrigued by his confidence, asks if he comes from some special lineage, but Terron just calmly dismisses the idea. He simply uses the technique often, he says, as he picks up a piece of white cloth from the wreckage, examining it closely. This small action instantly changes the game. Holding the scrap of cloth, Terron activates his search skill. His eyes sharpen, his focus absolute as he zeroes in on the unseen trail. A shimmering blue energy manifests, not just in front of them, but through the dense forest, snaking deep into the unknown. It's an undeniable path. Terron points straight ahead. This is their way forward. The blue trail leads them relentlessly until it suddenly stops, right at the riverbank. Terron confirms it. The creature washed its body right here. Azella can't believe it. Is he seriously saying a mere beast was intelligent enough to do something like that just to avoid being tracked? Terron considers it, then makes a chilling conclusion. This wasn't just instinct. The creature acted intentionally. It knew exactly what it was doing. But then, everything changes. The scent Terron was tracking, the one that supposedly vanished, suddenly grows exponentially stronger. It's not just close, it's right on top of them. Terron's eyes widen in pure shock, and he instantly spins around, screaming for everyone to dodge. As they scramble, a truly colossal gorilla bursts into view, just meters away. It's not just massive, it's terrifyingly powerful, far beyond anything they expected. The beast lets out a thunderous roar that shakes the ground, its huge hands already clutching massive stones, ready to strike. This is not just a fight. This is a desperate struggle for survival. The formation isn't even set before the creature launches its first strike, hurling massive stones that turn soldiers into nothing more than crushed remains in seconds. Chaos explodes across the field, but this is only the beginning of the nightmare. Turan barely manages to throw himself aside as a boulder whistles past his head, and when he finally steadies himself, he realizes the ground is already littered with the bodies of those who weren't as fast. Just a few feet away, Azella is doing whatever it takes to survive, desperately pulling the corpses of fallen soldiers over herself to act as a meat shield against the relentless barrage. It's a brutal move, but in this moment, there is no room for hesitation. She screams for her group to move as the monster screeches and bolts into the woods. The knights try to keep pace, but the creature is gaining distance fast, leaving the soldiers scrambling to hold their lines while the target slips away. This is where the panic starts to set in. Marvin and Azella dive into the forest after it, but the creature is a blur through the trees, making their pursuit feel hopeless. Just as it looks like the target is going to vanish for good, Turan finally makes his move. With a single, fluid motion, he draws his weapon and unleashes a surge of brilliant blue energy that cuts through the air with terrifying precision. The force of the strike is massive, sending a shock wave through the area that leaves everyone frozen in their tracks. Turan doesn't even break his stride, walking through the settling mist as a magic circle manifests around his hand. He isn't just watching the fight anymore. He's controlling it, but there is still one more move to be made. As the creature reels back from the impact, Azella seizes the opening and leaps forward with absolute killing intent. She screams for the monster to die, her arm extending as a torrent of flames swirls into a massive fire snake that incinerates the target where it stands. Turan watches closely, recognizing the legendary bloodline ability of the Voltas Pyromaniacs, and he realizes this team is more dangerous than he thought. With the threat finally neutralized, the adrenaline fades, leaving the soldiers to deal with the messy aftermath. Azella tries to play it cool, claiming she only felt a slight chill when the debris was flying, but Marvin doesn't let her off easy. He asks if she was actually terrified, only for her to snap back that he was the one screaming like a little girl. While the two of them bicker, the rest of the unit is in rough shape. Soldiers groan over broken limbs and bleeding head wounds, desperately calling for bandages and medicine to patch up the damage. Turan looks over the scene with a cold eye, noting that while they were lucky to have no casualties, this entire mess could have been avoided entirely. But he knows their luck is about to run out. Turan watches Azella and Marvin with a calculated gaze, realizing that while his own body strengthens with mana, the knights they lead should have been far more resilient. He hasn't forgotten how easily these two use the weak as human shields, and though Marvin notices his focus and asks what's wrong, Turan simply dismisses it to keep his true thoughts hidden. He knows exactly who he's dealing with, but the real test is about to begin. The three of them stand over a massive monster corpse deep in the forest as green mana begins to flow from the creature. Azella invites them to absorb the energy, and Turan realizes something the books only hinted at. The degree of enhancement doesn't decrease even when multiple people are draining at once. This is a game changer for his progression, but there's a catch that the others aren't prepared for. Azella and Marvin eventually hit their growth limits and are forced to stop, yet Terron continues to draw on the power effortlessly. Azella watches him in disbelief, trying to understand how a noble who hasn't even reached his full potential can already possess a mana capacity that rivals her own. She's starting to realize her father's decision to send Turan wasn't just for support, but because Turan is operating on an entirely different level. As the sun sets and they return to their camp, Marvin admits they never would have defeated the beast without Turan's tracking in that final, decisive blow. But Turan isn't satisfied with the victory because he's focused on the one mistake he made. He regrets not realizing the monster had a hidden search ability, which allowed it to strike first and catch them off guard. Terron explains his theory that these monsters awaken specific abilities based on their physical traits, like the monkey they fought, which used its oversized eyes and hands to scout through the dense forest. Marvin is stunned by how quickly he's figured everything out, but the source of Turan's knowledge is much more grounded than they expect. He simply spent his time in the library studying the monster encyclopedia while the others were resting. Marvin thinks the library is far too stuffy for his taste, and even Azella admits she gave up because the books were too difficult to comprehend. Turan just offers a bit of advice, suggesting she ask the librarian for easier books next time. He's making it look easy, but as he continues to outpace them, the gap between their power levels is becoming impossible to ignore. Turan realizes something is wrong the moment she addresses him by name, because in this city, no commoner or knight would ever dare skip a noble's formal title. This careless mistake gives her away instantly, making him wonder how she actually knows who he is. She casually mentions seeing his name on a permit, but then she adds something that changes everything. She claims that as long as she is within these walls, her gaze reaches everywhere, and nothing stays hidden from her for long. When Turan asks what he should call her, she reveals she has no name at all and invites him to choose one himself. She even suggests something scandalous like my love, but Turan isn't about to play along with her games. He decides to stick with librarian, which she finds incredibly stiff and boring. She claims he has been using her services for days without realizing it, but Turan knows he's never seen her before this moment. As she moves closer, Turan feels a strange pressure and tells her to back off because her presence is becoming a burden. He suspects she might be an ancient wizard, but the truth is far more complicated than that. She explains that when a soul inhabits something that isn't alive, it becomes a spirit, and she is quite literally the library itself. Her current form isn't even her true appearance. It is a reflection based entirely on Turan's own subconscious preferences. Turan thinks she's making things up, so he decides to test her nature in the most direct way possible. He reaches out and pushes his hand straight through her chest, watching as his arm passes through her like she is made of nothing but water. It is an awkward realization, and while she finds his touch strange, she laments her lack of physical power. If she actually had the strength to interfere, she would have punished every person who ever mistreated her books. This reveals a massive blind spot for the powerful House Voltas, who seem completely unaware that a sentient spirit is watching their every move. Turan realizes that everyone who used this library before him was effectively blind to her presence. There is a reason for this, and it points to something unique about Turan himself. She reveals that until now, no one else had the specific qualifications required to even perceive her, meaning Turan has just stepped into a role he didn't even know existed. The creator designed the library spirit with a very specific filter, meaning only those with a high enough type can even perceive her presence. She leans into Turan, teasingly asking if he finds it romantic that he is the only one who can see her, but Turan is focused on something else entirely. He questions what she means by type, and her answer changes everything. It is what wizards call a bloodline, a realization that catches Turan completely off guard. Turan desperately wants to know the truth about his own lineage, but there is a major problem because he is an orphan with no records. The library spirit offers a solution, though it comes with a catch that makes him instantly uneasy. She tells him she can check his bloodline right now, but she needs his full consent to examine his physical body. Before he can even process what that actually means, her expression shifts into something much more predatory. Turan wonders if this is how things are actually done, but he doesn't have time to back out. She lunges forward and pierces her hand directly into his chest, making Turan scream in shock as she declares they are now connected. He tells her to stop saying such weird things, yet he realizes with a start that the process does not actually hurt. It is what she finds inside him that really matters. The library spirit explains that while there are a few small fragments, His core consists of the pursuer and hunter bloodlines. These are the legendary traits of House Sahar, and Turan confirms that this is his family's legacy. But then, her eyes widen in surprise as she realizes there is something else buried deeper. Turan is a mixed blood, the result of two completely different lineages clashing within one body. Even the ancient library spirit cannot identify the second bloodline, because it is currently locked behind a powerful seal. She assures him that locked bloodlines are not that rare in complex combinations, and promises it will naturally open as his strength grows. This revelation sends Terron into a deep silence as he thinks back to his mother. She was always too educated and polite to be a simple commoner, leading him to wonder if she was a fallen noble whose magic was simply too weak to be noticed. Terron bows and thanks the spirit for the clarity, but she is not letting him go that easily. She demands that if he is truly grateful, he should stay in the library for another full month. Turan realizes that reading books alone is a waste of time when he has a living encyclopedia right in front of him. So he stops studying in silence and begins treating her like a personal mentor. He begins questioning her about the most complex secrets contained in books that were plundered and lost thousands of years ago. She begins manipulating the very laws of nature before his eyes, showing him how to control floating spheres of water and explaining the invisible forces that govern the world. Having the fundamental laws of nature taught to him in plain words is a treasure beyond measure, and Terron watches in total awe. He learns about the existence of microorganisms and how every disease and the very decay of living things are caused by these invisible germs. This knowledge is not just academic. It is a fundamental shift in how he understands power. Turan is no longer just a student, and as he absorbs these forbidden truths, he is becoming something far more dangerous than a simple knight. He isn't just training his body anymore as he starts mastering the fundamental laws of the world itself. By grasping complex concepts like the refraction of light and the mechanics of generating fire through friction, he's turning the environment into his greatest weapon. But it's a sudden understanding of how living things break and how they heal that changes everything. And he's about to put that knowledge to a very dangerous use. The library spirit senses Terron is finally moving on, and he admits the owner has been dropping subtle hints that it's time for him to go. Desperate not to be left alone, she lunges forward to grab him, but her spectral body passes right through him, and she crashes onto the floor. She knows she is bound to this place and can never leave, so she begs Terron to stay with her instead, promising to take perfect care of him if he just gives up his journey. Terron gives her a flat refusal, but this isn't the end of their conversation. The librarian huffs at his rejection, yet she can't let him leave empty-handed. She warns him that the land holds the heavy legacy of the gods and suggests he keep a sharp eye out, as there are other spirits out there who might know even more than she does. Turan steps toward the exit and promises to visit eventually, and though she acts like she doesn't care if he ever returns, he knows she is just masking her loneliness. He leaves her with a reminder that she still has plenty of books left to read, and then he steps out into a world that has been waiting for him for 18 years. Turan consults the continental map he took from the library, noting that his destination lies to the east of Orum. House Sahar has its base deep within the Emerald Desert, and that is where the clues to his parents' disappearance are buried. Turan is heading deep into the forest, dead set on finding any trace of his parents. He's telling himself there's no reason to rush, because if those clues haven't vanished in 18 years, they aren't going anywhere now, though he has no idea things are about to go south fast. He stops by a river to set up camp, trying to stay level-headed about the search until the sound of a horse neighing cuts through the air. Turan immediately drops into the bushes to stay out of sight, watching as a horse gallops past and leaves an unconscious man lying in the dirt. He notices the saddle and starts to wonder if the horse is actually trying to protect the guy rather than hurting him. Two men step out to block the horse's path, calling it a straight-up demon and wondering how a pet could be this strong. Turan realizes the horse is actually the one under fire and watches as one of the men tells his partner to create an opening, only for his friend to snap back that it's way easier said than done. Energy begins to swirl as they chant in a strange language, and Turan recognizes this immediately as the dark elf necromancy he's read about in books. He stays hidden, weighing his options and wondering if he should jump in, especially since he can't be sure if the man on the ground was the one who started this mess in the first place. Things take a dark turn when one of the dark elves starts eating a human hand and starts a fight with his partner over who gets the next piece. Seeing that they're literal cannibals is the final straw, so Terron quickly activates his stealth skill to move in. One of the dark elves is busy complaining about how the men he killed were way too hairy when a sudden, violent strike tears right through him. The elf is completely blindsided, desperately shouting for his monsters to gather as he tries to fend off the surrounding beasts. Out of nowhere, a stone flies through the air and hits a ram-headed monster squarely in the forehead. Panicked, the dark elf demands to know who's hiding and orders them to show themselves right now. But his situation only gets worse. Massive wooden spikes erupt from the ground and impale a bull monster, leaving the dark elf gritting his teeth in frustration. He realizes he's dealing with a stealth user and quickly summons another beast from the earth, hoping to flush his attacker out. A bright golden aura begins to radiate from the shadows as Terron steps forward with a confident smile. The light intensifies as the dark elf finally realizes exactly what he's up against. Terron corners his target and shouts that he's found the demon, but the dark elf immediately orders his monsters to kill him. Terron doesn't hesitate, concentrating energy into his palm until a sphere of fire erupts, and he unleashes a massive blast that incinerates the charging creature. The victory is short-lived because a massive monster slams into Terron, sending him to the ground. He realizes these things are dangerously fast, though he's at least glad he managed to take one of them out of the equation early. A wolf-like monster lunges and sinks its teeth into his leg, but Terron delivers a heavy kick that sends the beast tumbling back while he quickly scans for the next threat. The situation turns south when a bull-like monster charges, and the impact sends Terron flying through the trees. He's gasping in agony as he collapses to the ground, completely vulnerable while the monster's closing on him. The dark elf starts laughing at the sight, gloating that this is exactly what Terron deserves for killing Kel and promising that he'll be begging for death before the end. Out of nowhere, the horse kicks the dark elf squarely in the face and begins relentlessly trampling him into the dirt. The dark elf is actually pleading for help while the monsters pivot to attack the horse, leaving him broken on the ground. Even as he groans in humiliation and snarls that he's going to kill his opponent, a sharp beam of energy flashes through the clearing. The light pierces the dark elf's head with enough force to kill him instantly. Terron stands at a distance as the dust settles, and once the horse is safe in the clearing, he finally lets out a long breath and collapses. He's panting heavily and realizes this ordeal took everything he had left. The horse leans down to check on him, and Terron reaches out to stroke its face while thanking it for the help. Much later that night, the man Terron saved finally wakes up and yells in total confusion. Terron is already sitting by a campfire and calmly lets him know that he's finally awake. When a man asks who he is, Terron introduces himself and explains that he's the one who stepped in to save him from the dark elf attack. The man realizes the gravity of the situation just as the horse nudges him, and he calls out the name Tilly. Terron watches them, noting that Tilly is a seriously good horse for sticking by him like that. Terron watches the red horse, impressed that the animal knew exactly how to protect its master and find a safe spot to hide. The stranger thanks Terron for the save and introduces himself as Azai's of Houseberg. Terron cuts straight to the point and asks why Azai's was even fighting dark elves in the first place. Azai's explains there wasn't a reason at all. He was just on a pilgrimage with his crew when they were ambushed out of nowhere. It clearly hits him hard as he admits he knew other races could be savage, but he never imagined they'd actually be this heartless. He apologizes for breaking down, explaining that the people who died today meant everything to him. Terron asks if they were his actual family, but Azai says they were the knights and servants who basically raised him since he was a kid. Hearing that makes Turan realize Azai is actually a decent guy. Turan asks how many dark elves were involved, and Azai says he managed to take out 2 of them and hopes that's the end of it. To be sure, Turan shuts his eyes and fires off his search skill, scanning every single inch of the forest. He opens his eyes and confirms the coast is clear, telling Azai there aren't any more dark elves lurking nearby. Azai asks if he's in a hurry to be somewhere, and Turan mentions that he's actually on a pilgrimage of his own. Azai is genuinely shocked that someone with this much power is traveling solo, wondering if Turan is the secret heir to some massive house. Turan keeps it low-key, claiming his situation is a bit complicated and insisting he's not even that strong since he needed an ambush and the horses helped to win. Right then, both men release their mana, letting their energy surge and collide in the night air. Turan is caught off guard by the sheer weight of Azai's mana, realizing that if he hadn't just absorbed the Dark Elf's energy, he would have been completely outclassed. At the same time, Azai is reading Turan's energy and decides there's no way he's a commoner. Mana like this only comes from a high-tier and noble bloodline. While sitting by the fire, Azai realizes Turan probably hasn't even reached his full potential yet, making it even weirder that he's out here alone. Azai offers Turan an invitation to Houseberg, promising to make it worth his while if Turan escorts him home safely. Turan asks what kind of repayment he's actually talking about. Azai explains that Houseberg are master enchanters and direct vassals of the great Erebion. Azai strikes his chest with total confidence, declaring that his bloodline has crafted magic tools for generations. He promises to create the absolute best tool for Turan, who just takes it all in with a silent nod. While they stand in a forest that's become a burial ground, Azai notes that everything is finally wrapping up. He admits he wishes he could send everyone back to their hometowns, even if it's probably not going to happen. And then out of nowhere, he thanks Turan. Turan asks what he's even grateful for. So Azai admits he appreciated that Turan didn't judge him for crying over his lost subordinates. He felt acting that way was beneath his noble status. But Turan genuinely wonders why he'd think his own empathy is pathetic, leading Azai to credit the lessons Turan taught him for changing his perspective. Turan is actually caught off guard when Azai refers to him as a friend, and he looks at the offered hand with genuine surprise. Azai goes for a firm handshake and tells him he's looking forward to what's next too. Azai stops near a heavy chest on the ground and suggests they take a break before moving on. Turan asks what's inside, so Azai kneels down to open it and explains it's a cold storage chest he's kept stocked with supplies since their last time in the city. Turan checks the storage container and asks if it's always this cold inside. Azai confirms it is, explaining that the main house's technology keeps food fresh for about a week and even allows for reheating. He demonstrates a magic pitcher where water flows just by pressing a button. Then he moves on to a magic tool that can literally build a shelter out of gathered wood. He presents another device that triggers an alarm whenever someone gets too close. Then Azai points out his own shirt, explaining the fabric is a magic tool with a built-in self-cleaning function. Turan realizes these kinds of magic tools aren't exactly common. He tells Azai the whole setup is honestly impressive. Turan jokes that the set of clothing alone is already worth the price of saving Azai's life. Azai isn't having it, though, insisting his life is worth way more than that, and promising to give him much better rewards once they return to the main house. Azai declares that if they won't give him what he wants, he'll just make it himself, hinting that there's something far greater than the tools he's already shown. Terron isn't really sure what he's getting at. Azai mentions that during their time traveling together, he's seen so many types of Turan's magic that he's completely lost count. He lists off everything he's witnessed, from animal control and freezing to instant death and lightning strikes. He asks if Turan has spent his entire life grinding magic, or if he just has some insane bloodline ability that lets him master whatever he wants. Turan just thinks to himself that it isn't that deep. He just knows how to do it. Azai laughs and reminds Turan they already agreed not to pry into family secrets. He claims he was just kidding anyway, because there's no way a bloodline ability like that actually exists. Azai's pivots to asking Turan how old he is. He notes that Turan doesn't look a day over 30, but questions if he's secretly lived for 80 years or something. Turan clears it up, explaining that his birthday is only a month away and he'll be turning 18 this year. Azai is completely blindsided by that. He reveals that he's actually turning 43, which leaves Turan pretty stunned by the age gap. Azai brushes it off, saying a 20-year difference doesn't really matter for people like them. He admits he should have guessed Turan's age, given he has the kind of power needed to take down 2 wraith sorcerers. He confesses he never expected to find 2 geniuses like Turan in the world. When Turan asks what he means by there being 2 of them, Azai explains that while the other one might not be quite on Turan's level, they possess an incredible bloodline. Azai finishes by mentioning that he knows another genius around Turan's age who just happens to be his cousin. Turan wonders if they could just get her to make some magic tools for them, but Azai shuts that idea down immediately because she's actually from the main house. Turan repeats the title in shock since he doesn't quite get the weight of it yet, though he has no clue how serious this is about to get. Azai confirms the situation and drops the real bombshell that she's a princess of Erebayon. He adds that she might even become the head of a great house one day, which honestly changes the entire vibe of their mission. They keep moving as Azai explains that elite houses don't follow the same rules as your typical wizard family. He points out that the heads of these great houses don't just hand their positions down to their own children, and that's really only the beginning of the drama. Because a single generation can have dozens of relatives all fighting for power, there's a constant line of candidates just waiting for any chance to take the lead. Even though there were others stronger than the head's own children, Mesa was on another level when it came to talent. She stands there in silence, having mastered every form of combat magic in only 10 years. Azai explains that with the full backing of her house, she basically reached the level of their core members by the time she was 21. Terron asks if the house performed a funeral for the magic itself, considering how much she's packing at that age. And Azai confirms that when their eldest granduncle passed away, his magic power was devoured by her, while the rest of them just got the leftovers. It clicks for Terron right then that there's a very clear reason why the great houses stay at the top of the food chain. Azai points ahead to let Terron know they're almost there, and Terron just nods as he takes in the path. They've reached the Decane Plains, the heart of Erebayon, and the territory of Houseberg Zavalin. A woman rushes forward to ask what on earth is happening, and Azai immediately folds into a hug with his mom. Turan watches the whole display in silence, wondering if Azai is actually 43 years old while he's standing there wailing like a kid. A man steps in and tells Azai to keep his dignity and at least address her as his mother, which gets a quick apology out of him. Azai introduces Turan as a new friend from the south who risked his life to save him, admitting he never would have made it back alive if Turan hadn't been there. His mother is confused since the pilgrimage route isn't supposed to be that dangerous, but Azai drops the news that they were jumped by dark elf wraith sorcerers. She loses it instantly, shouting in a rage and threatening to mobilize an entire army to tear those wretches apart for daring to target her child. The bearded man tells the house head she needs to keep it together since people are watching, then turns his focus to Turan to ask which house he belongs to. Turan admits he can't really say, but when the man presses him, he explains that it's more accurate to say he doesn't know because he was born to a commoner and didn't even know who Azai was. Azai yells in surprise, asking why Turan never brought this up, but Turan just says it wasn't exactly something worth bragging about. The head of Berg takes it all in and addresses Turan as a member of an unknown house, declaring that because he saved her child, she'll make sure he's properly rewarded. She offers him a stay at the finest inn in the city, since a room at the house is a tall order, but Azai is completely baffled, insisting they should be hosting Turan at their home instead. Azai's mother points out they already have an important guest, and bringing in a complete stranger is a huge risk, but Mesa cuts in and tells her aunt not to worry. She reasons that since Terron saved Azai, it's not like he's going to suddenly pull a 180 and try to assassinate her. Azai's is surprised to see Mesa there at all and asks what's going on, while Mesa is more focused on figuring out who Turan is. Looking at her, Turan realizes she's the princess of Erebion, but honestly, he thinks she looks more like a walking corpse than a royal. Azai's mother explains that Mesa is staying with them because she was nearly killed by Zahar's vermin. This immediately makes Azai suspicious, and he asks if the main house was actually breached, wondering if it was an inside job since the place is usually so well fortified. Mesa confirms there was likely a traitor involved and admits the main house is crawling with people whose loyalties are pretty questionable. She's clearly done with the conversation, though, and excuses herself to go get some rest. Azai's mother then tells Aina to lead Terron to the second-best guest room for the night. Later that night, Terron is still wide awake when Azai asks if he wants something from their storage, but Terron says he isn't interested. That changes fast when a massive strike of energy erupts nearby, making Terron look up in total shock. Azai doesn't even blink, explaining that it's just Mesa practicing her magic and that she's always this dedicated. Turan asks if he's looking at the Erebion bloodline magic, and Azai confirms it's the storm bloodline. As lightning continues to strike outside, Azai admits he's never hated his own bloodline, but he's definitely a little envious of Mesa. To him, it looks like she's becoming a literal god right in front of them. Turan can't help but wonder just how strong the next leader of Erebion actually is. Azai asks if he wants to go see for himself, but Turan hesitates because he knows how bad it looks for a suspicious outsider to be wandering around. Azai tells him not to worry about it and offers to vouch for him, but then he finally lets the cat out of the bag. He's actually just dying to know who would win in a fight between Turan and Mesa. Turan is left completely winded and drenched in sweat, gasping for air as he tries to process what just happened. That's all for today, folks. I know it's too short, but I might upload the next chapter tomorrow. I have an idea. If you like this episode, subscribe to my channel and let me know what manhwa do you want to feature next time.